Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Janice Lo. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Hong Kong's economic growth gains momentum in the third quarter, but misses market estimates. The body of former Premier Li Keqiang is to be cremated in Beijing on Thursday. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejects a ceasefire as his troops exchange fire with Hamas in Gaza. Hong Kong's economic rebound continued in the third quarter, but the increase in the gross domestic product did not meet market expectations. Hong Kong's economic recovery has continued as spending and visitor numbers increased. The gross domestic product for the 3 months ending in September jumped 4.1% from a year earlier, compared with growth of 1.5% in the second quarter. But the rise disappointed the market, which had been expecting a 5.2% expansion. On a quarterly basis, GDP edged up by 0.1% after a decline of 1.3% between April and June. The third quarter spurt came as private consumption marked its third consecutive quarterly growth at 6.5%, although it was lower than the 7.7% rise in the second quarter. Government spending continued to drop, but at 4.5%. The pace was slower than the 9.8% in the previous quarter. Exports dropped 8.6%. But the decline was narrower than the 15.1% contraction in the previous quarter. Imports fell by 6%, compared with a decline of 15.8% in the second quarter. Looking ahead, the government expects inbound tourism and household spending to continue to prop up the economy, despite risks overseas. The authorities earlier raised the whole-year growth forecast to between 4% and 5%. And there could be a further adjustment after they study the advanced estimates announced today. Chief Executive John Lee will skip the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco next month. The government said this is because of scheduling issues. Financial Secretary Paul Chan will represent Hong Kong. Lee was sanctioned by the United States after the national security law took effect in 2020. For the first time in 37 years, the Association for Democracy and People's Livelihood will not be running in the district council elections. The grassroots party failed to get nominations from 3 district-level committees, but the chief executive defended the requirement under the revamped electoral system. Macy Mock reports.
The Association for Democracy and People's Livelihood, or ADPL, along with the Democratic Party, failed to secure enough nominations to field candidates in December's district council elections. Despite receiving sufficient nominations from residents in their districts, 2 ADPL hopefuls did not get a single endorsement from 3 district-level committees. One of them, Chow Kai Lim, held back tears today as he declared, "We did not give up on residents, but maybe Hong Kong gave up on me." ADPL Chairman Bruce Liu slammed the requirement that potential candidates must obtain 9 nominations from the 3 committees. Chief Executive John Lee was asked whether the revamped electoral system was too harsh, because the centrist third side also failed to secure enough nominations. But Lee defended the new rules, saying it's up to potential candidates to convince the district committees to nominate them.
So that applies to anybody, whatever backgrounds, whether he belongs to any political party or not. And I think that is most important because the system has to be fair and applies to everybody in the same way.
Lee said 171 people have been nominated to contest 88 directly elected seats in the district council geographical constituencies. Despite the lack of opposition candidates, he expects the competition to be fierce. Ms. Mark, HKIBC.
The chief executive says the immigration department has a set of principles to decide whether to deny any person a visa. His comment came after a Chinese university academic was dismissed when her work visa wasn't extended. Janice Lo reports.
History Associate Professor Rowena He, who holds a Canadian passport, joined the Chinese university in 2019. The scholar, who did research on the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown, lost her job last week when her work visa was not extended. Chief Executive John Li was asked if He's dismissal ran counter to his campaign to attract foreign talent.
I think the immigration department will always act in accordance with prevailing policy and the principles, which include whether the person holds a valid travel document, whether he is going to be a burden to Hong Kong, or whether there is any risk regarding security and crime.
The Chinese university said non-locals must have a valid work visa to work in the city. He is not the first academic to be denied a visa. Last year, American legal scholar Ryan Forson, who specializes in LGBTQ rights, failed to get a visa to teach in Hong Kong University. Janice Lo, HKIBC.
Former Premier Li Keqiang, who died of a heart attack last Friday, will be cremated in Beijing on Thursday. Flags across the country will be flown at half-mast in his honor. State media has announced that the body of Li Keqiang, China's former number 2 leader, will be cremated in Beijing on Thursday. The former premier died of a heart attack in Shanghai last Friday, and his body was flown to the capital on the same day. On Thursday, flags across China, including Hong Kong and Macau, and at Chinese diplomatic missions abroad, will be flown at half-mast. Li's death at the age of 68 came as a shock, as he had shown no signs of chronic illnesses. He served as premier for 2 full 5-year terms, stepping down only 7 months ago. Li is remembered as the people's premier. The Xinhua News Agency described him as an outstanding member of the Chinese Communist Party, a loyal communist fighter who had faced challenges, and an exceptional revolutionist, statesman, and leader of both the party and country. Overseas, heavy fighting has been reported in the Gaza Strip between Hamas and Israeli soldiers. The battles occurred as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected calls for a ceasefire and vowed not to step down.
The only thing that I intend to have resign is Hamas. We're going to resign them to the dustbin of history. That's my goal, that's my responsibility, and that's what I'm leading the country to do. This is my responsibility now.
Netanyahu declared this was a time for war. His forces said infrastructure was among targets they destroyed overnight. Hamas said it ambushed 3 Israel vehicles and attacked soldiers with shells. The invasion came more than 3 weeks after Hamas attacked Israel and killed 1,400 people. Israel said during the Gaza operation, it freed a female soldier who was among the over 200 people captured by Hamas. There is growing alarm over the number of Palestinian children killed by the Israeli bombardment of Gaza. The United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, told the UN Security Council that more than 400 Gazan children were being killed or injured every day. Palestinian deaths in the past 3 weeks have been put at over 8,000. The charity Save the Children said the number includes 3,200 children. 3 Chinese astronauts have returned to Earth safely at the end of their 5-month mission. During their stay in the Tiangong space station, the Shenzhou 16 crew conducted experiments and spacewalks. Sachin Kathy reports.
Hunkered down in their capsule, the 3 Shenzhou 16 astronauts prepared for their return home after 5 months aboard the Tiangong space station. After separating from the orbiting module, the spacecraft fired up its engines and headed back to Earth. Monitored by mission control engineers in Beijing, the spaceship re-entered the Earth's atmosphere at high speed, deploying its parachutes to curtail velocity before touching down at the landing site in the Gobi Desert in Inner Mongolia just after 8 a.m. Recovery and medical teams were on standby to help the crew out of the spaceship. All three astronauts were in good health after spending 154 days in the orbital outpost. They were replaced by the Shenzhou 17 crew who reached the Tiangong space station last week. Sachin Katwi, HKIBC.
Hong Kong will soon launch Asia's first exchange-traded fund in Saudi Arabia as part of the SAR's bid to improve ties with the Middle East.
In a world heavily drifted by geopolitics and Middle East investors looking for opportunities to diversify, Hong Kong is no doubt best positioned to connect the capital and vast investment opportunities between the Gulf region and Asia. We continue to pursue other measures to further strengthen our role as a super connector between the mainland and the rest of the world.
Addressing a regulatory forum in Hong Kong, Chan also touched on the JPEG's cryptocurrency scandal. He said the government is committed to regulating virtual assets, pointing out that regulations and market development go hand in hand. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index ended the day down by 293 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tracker Fund lost 31 cents, while Alibaba lost $1.80. HSBC was down $1.05, while AIA was also down by 85 cents. To the foreign exchange against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.33, the pound's at 9.53, and the Canadian dollar is at 5.65. Over in the UK market, the FTSE 100 is currently up by 33 points. Thousands of people have flocked to the city's entertainment hotspots to celebrate Halloween. Lan Kwai Fong and Central was packed with revelers, many of whom came in their scariest costumes. Parents accompanied their children to see the ghouls and ghosts. Others were there to capture the unusual scenes on camera. Bars and restaurants in Lan Kwai Fong expect business this week to be the best in 7 years. A number of roads in Central are closed until tomorrow morning to accommodate the crowds. On to the weather now. Fine and dry tomorrow, with the temperature ranging from 24 to 29 degrees, remaining fine until the weekend. That's our main news for Tuesday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Janice Lo. Good night.